Hi, this is Lauren from lemknitcrochet Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to knit an I-cord around a pipe cleaner. This is just a really neat technique that I discovered from my friend Susan Glaudino, and she asked me to share it with all of you. So, what I have started, so you know what you need, all you need is some yarn, a pair of double point needles, and a pipe cleaner. And usually I'm very matchy-matchy, so normally I would probably pick a light green pipe cleaner to go with this light green yarn, but so that you can clearly see the difference between the two, I picked a really bright blue one. It's okay if you don't use the same color yarn and pipe cleaner, but sometimes this little fuzz on it can poke through. So if you are worried that it might show through a little bit, I would try to match the colors a little better, just so it hides it. Anyway, let's get started. So let's say I had just started it. I've already cast on my 4 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and do a 4-stitch I-cord for this one using long tail cast on. And you'll see my working yarn's already back over here, and I'm ready to start my I-cord and start knitting. So of course my first step, just as any I-cord is, you need to slide your stitches to the other end of your needle so that you can knit and pull that yarn across to this front stitch. So the way this is going to work is a little bit differently than a normal I-cord. Only that because you're going to have to be aware of where your pipe cleaner is and where your working yarn is as you're knitting. Knitting the I-cord is exactly the same as usual. That's the only difference. You've got to be aware of your pipe cleaner at all times. Now, one thing I want you to notice before we even get started is, let me make sure I'm in frame, that your pipe cleaner, when you start knitting it, the length of your pipe cleaner, however long you're wanting it, needs to be, the longer portion that you're wanting to cover needs to be on this top left side. See how there's this little tip at the bottom? You're not knitting downward, you're knitting up. So if you leave this tail like this and start knitting up, you're going to have this part covered with your I-cord, and then this part's just going to be hanging out. Now I do recommend when you start having a little bit of a tail at the end that you can later chop off, because it's a little bit easier in the first part of your I-cord. You could also, instead of cutting it off, you can kind of tug it up a little bit once you get a little length on your I-cord. But anyway, let's get started. So your first step is you've slid your stitches over, you're ready to start your I-cord and start knitting. But before you can start knitting, you need to make sure to place your pipe cleaner in the right spot. So, your working yarn's back here. You're going to place your I-cord flush against your stitches. And when you start knitting, you're going to wrap this yarn, the working yarn, around that pipe cleaner so that it catches it. So when you're knitting, the first few rounds I'm going to give you, it's going to be a little tricky because you're trying to catch it long enough that it's not going to slip out. But once you get the first few rounds done, it gets stuck in there and it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like from the back so you know what it'll look like. When you're actually knitting, this is what it should look like. You've got your stitches lined up in the front, you've got it wrapped around to the back, and you'll start knitting. But this is what the back looks like, so in case you get confused and you're not sure how it's supposed to look when it's wrapped, this is what it looks like. And you'll see I've got my stitches back here, my pipe cleaner flush against those stitches, and then I've pulled this working yarn around. See how it's wrapping? If I didn't pull it around, see how it's kind of just dangling there? You pull it around and it's wrapping it. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and knit our first round so that I can show you how this is going to work throughout knitting around your pipe cleaner. So it gets very tricky at the beginning because you're trying to make sure this pipe cleaner doesn't move. And you don't want it to slip out weird, or you have to kind of start over or slip it in weird. Okay, so I'm just going to knit a normal I-cord. And just like every I-cord you ever knit, the first few rounds are loose and the back's going to look weird, but as you keep knitting, it will look normal, like a normal I-cord. Okay. So notice I'm taking my time because number one, I don't want you to hear the clanging of a drop needle. But number two, I don't want this pipe cleaner to fall out. Okay, so I've knit my first round. I want you to notice where your working yarn is after you knit this first round. Here's my working yarn. It is no longer caught behind this pipe cleaner. If you turn it to the other side, you'll see right here, see this loop down here? That's the one, that's my first one that I had wrapped, and it has held the pipe cleaner. The second round, look, it's in front of it. It's not wrapping it. So this is the one tricky thing you have to remember the whole time you knit around your pipe cleaner. You need to move this working yarn every end of your round back around your pipe cleaner so that you can start knitting again with it caught over your yarn. See that? See how I did that? It was over here in the front because I had just finished a round. Every end of round you need to take it, pull it back where it circles your pipe cleaner, where it holds it really well. See? So as long as you've got this one little loop that's just kind of like, hey, what's up, and holding it, you're going to be good. Okay, so you're going to continue this process as long as your I-cord needs to be. So I'm going to go ahead and show you one more time knitting the I-cord and moving the yarn. You're just going to do this all the way up till you bind off, and it's very easy. It's a little fiddly at the first couple rounds, but once you get that pipe cleaner caught, no big deal. And as I was saying, how you can push this pipe cleaner, the early rounds, it's pretty easy to still slide it up a little bit. So if it starts to droop or is a little bit weird, you can fix it in the early rounds. Okay, so let's go ahead. Remember, I did move my yarn already. Don't forget to do that. I moved my yarn already, so it's caught the back. And I'm going to go ahead. Where are we going? Oh, I was grabbing my tail yarn. Okay, so I've wrapped it around, and I'm going to knit my normal I-cord, which I-cord is like the coolest invention ever, especially when you involve a pipe cleaner and it's like flush wrapped against it. Okay, so I've knit my 4 stitches. I'm ready to slide my stitches back down to start my next row of I-cord, but oh no, don't forget your tail yarn. See how it's hooked twice now? We've got 2 little loops hooked. Oh no, I need to hook it again. So we've got to move this back over every single time so that when you start knitting again, it's going to hook it again. Okay, so you can continue doing this however long you want your I-cord wrapped pipe cleaner to be. What I like to do is add a little, I like to measure out exactly how much I need so that I don't have to sit there and check with the ruler all the time, so your pipe cleaner can be the length you need. But I like to, you can either add a couple, I add like a 1/4 inch to it, just so I can trim it at the end so there's not this sticky little wire sticking out. Or you can knit it, you can cut the pipe cleaner to be the exact length that you need and just knit a little bit past it so you don't get those little ends poking through at the end. But one other tip you need to know, because this isn't long enough, I can't really show you, but I can explain. As you knit this along, you need to kind of tug on your stitches a little bit. If you tug them a little, they'll stretch out and look much nicer. Even just that little tug I just did, see how they're kind of gripping it? As I keep going on, it'll look like a normal knit stitch, really flush tight together if you keep pulling it really lightly. And it'll also keep you from having to knit as much or as long because it stretches it out a little bit. But that's about it. So now you know how to knit around a pipe cleaner with your I-cord.